Hey everybody, welcome to a new episode of Walk in Faith. I'm excited to be sitting down my new friend DJ Caruso, who's also a fellow Italian from Sicily. But DJ, like I said off camera, I watched the film last night, and I know there's been a lot of controversy about the film from both sides. And I don't really want to talk about the controversy. I don't want to talk about sort of the creative decisions or a theological discussion. What I walked away with, and I don't want to say saddened, but for people that didn't see this, the power of love from the beginning opening scene to the end, all I kept thinking about was the power of love. How love can transform, unite, and change the world. That's the only thing, not the only, but the thing that I got out of that film. So I just want to thank you for sitting down with me.
Oh, well, man, thank you. That's really nice and great for you to say because that is true. It is a movie that's about love and it's about light and it's about sacrifice and everything that this beautiful young woman did to get us to where we are today, to deliver us our greatest gift, and that gift is love and that gift is forgiveness. So I'm really happy to hear that you got that out of the film.
Yeah, I mean, it was like this first initial scene. I kept stopping the film, and nobody likes to watch movies with me because I'm always stopping and writing. And my wife's like, like, don't watch a movie with me. But I'm watching this, and I started getting emotional during the trailer. And I had a conference call, and the guy calls me. And he goes, "Are you crying?" I go, "What happened?" I said, "I'm watching the trail of Mary." 1 minute in, I was like that. The opening statement, because it made me reflect. And I'm like, I was thinking about you too. And I went on your Facebook, your social media, and I started just to look at some of your Instagram posts, and you post a lot about love. So I knew right away as I'm watching this film, I said, this wasn't just a project. This is something personal for you because I mean, this is what you embody. I looked at your photos. I wanted to make sure, that this is really, truly you. And this is. You
Yeah.
speak about love throughout all of your Instagram posts, from your family to Martin Luther King to quotes from Jesus. I mean, this is you.
It is. It is me. Yeah. Well, it's so nice you say it. Yeah, it is. It is me, and it is what it is. And I've always been like, I'm a firm believer in. Even when I made this movie Disturbia, this band, not a surf, wrote a thing called like Always Love, Hate Will Get You Every Time, right? And even in movies like that, I just want to celebrate. It's actually a simple choice. It's a simple choice. I think we get so marred in like controversies and all these things that man's world and man's nature kind of puts on us. And I think Terrence Malick is always dealing with this in such an
Mhm.
amazing way.
Right.
There's two roads. There's man's nature and there's God's grace. And I've chosen to follow God's grace, and not always in my life have I been that way, but lately you get to a point in your life where you realize it's that simple. Like love can change the world, and bringing God and bringing something into your heart and having compassion and having the ability to forgive, it's huge. It's huge.
No, I agree. I mean, and like you said, it's love. Like when I'm watching the movie and it's sort of it's applicable to and it's relatable to anyone. Like it wasn't
Yeah.
like a Catholic film or a Christian film. It was a film about a woman that most of us only know the story or the starting point of the angel Gabriel. Nobody knows
Mhm.
the backstory. So we see it as, I have my beautiful picture where she's riding the donkey and it's such a beautiful birth and all the animals are around. And that's how I
Right.
envision it. But then you took this notion that I think we all created because we want to be comfortable and I want to, recognize Jesus and what he went through in a certain way. And you threw me into this situation where I was so uncomfortable and said, well, this isn't what I envisioned. This is not the story that I know. I remember the angel Gabriel appearing and Joseph had some, maybe he was a little bit, contemplating what to do and they walked along and then I watched this movie and I'm like, oh my God, you really put me in a position where I had to rethink sort of my vision and my perspective of what truly happened during that time and how horrible it would have been for Mary. That scene where she's almost stoned, right? Like I'm I'm,
Mhm.
I'm watching that going, it really shook my heart. And then I said, this movie is so powerful, regardless of what you believe, because it goes back to what we said. It's love, the love and the overcoming adversity and what she went through. I mean, you really threw me into this situation, this position that I wasn't ready for it.
Oh, well, yeah, well, that was sort of the intent. The intent was that it was sort of say we've never really in a long time or cinematically seen it from her perspective and her point of view as a young woman and all the decisions and the apprehensions and the fears. And I think you touched upon it. I've always been a firm believer of this in life and athletics and every single thing. Like in order to achieve great things, it's going to cost you.
Hmm.
There is when you make that sacrifice, it's gonna cost you. Even when she accepts God and takes God into her heart and says, "Let it be done to me, let it be me." her life doesn't get any easier. It doesn't mean that your life gets easier, because when you do great things, there are going to be sacrifices, there are going to be pains, there are going to be things. And I think it's really interesting you mentioned that stoning scene, because I think also, if you think about, if you just follow the scriptures with Joseph, if anybody just followed the scriptures with Joseph, he says not one word in the gospel, not a word. Not a single word is spoken by Joseph in the gospel, or even someone hearing a word that Joseph spoke, nothing. So how do we, as filmmakers and storytellers, what can we do, and how do we give Joseph a voice? And so that is sort of the challenge of the filmmaking, to stay very, very, adhere to what we all know and what the story is and what the Bible tells us. But at the same time, we have to fill these voids. And I think it's very harrowing. And there's a really, Joseph, who's kind of thrown into this and realizes what he's getting into. There's a great scene with him after that stoning where he basically says to her, like, I don't know, like, really what's going on, but I just know that I will love this child the best I can. And if you let me, I will love you the best that I can. And I think that's a really strong moment. And like, just the fact that we gave Joseph a voice, and a voice to say that, is very powerful. And it's done with reverence, and it's done with love. It's not done with anything else but that intent. So, yeah, it was a really, 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 a beautiful challenge, and a great journey in sort
Mhm.
of exploring all those.
No, you said a lot of things, and I always, and I quote somebody else, I didn't make it up, but what are you
Yeah.
willing to leave behind, right? Like you said, you need to be able to, or willing to leave something behind in order for us to especially fulfill what God has placed in our heart. And just one thing too, like I don't want to jump to the end of the film, but
Mhm.
that last scene sort of is exactly what you're talking about when I think it was a high priest says, I'm just going to quote it, it says
Yeah.
that he will be opposed, right? The sword will pierce your heart. So I mean, and so the thought of many hearts would be revealed, like that. Like when he said that to her, I was like, wow, imagine if that scene would have happened in the beginning of the film. And then I always put myself in the position of what would I say? Like, and
Right.
but she didn't back off. She continuously moved forward and said, I am willing to sort of, in essence, carry that cross, right? Keep our eyes
Right.
on the cross. And I thought about you. I mean, that Lucifer scene, like that voice that comes, which listen, I've done a lot of projects and not as many as you. I wish I have, but that voice comes to all of us,
Yeah.
especially when you're doing a faith-based film, a religious film. I mean, you see it. I don't even have to say it. It's all over the
Right.
media, but that voice comes. But then you said that, like, or I can see it in your eyes that this film has impacted and inspired you way beyond probably what you thought. So
Mhm.
tell me about that voice that came to you, and then how did you sort of change, and how has this film impacted and inspired you, whether it's personally, through your marriage, your relationship? I can tell something is transformed within you.
Oh, wow, that's nice. Well, I do think that you hit on something that's very important, because I think this is the transformation for me, is that it's our choice to make this acceptance. I think so many times we hear stories like Mary's story in this, and Gabriel says to do this, so she does this, but she makes the choice. She makes the choice to go forward. She makes a choice to accept what God's giving her. And I think that's what really was sort of like my aha, my light bulb went on in this movie when we were shooting that scene, and Gabriel comes to her, and then she basically says, it's not that he tells her what to do. He tells her what can happen, and she accepts that and says, all right, let it be me. And I think that's where I am in my life right now, where you can take that in and you say, let it be me. And you have to navigate all these other things and all these other forces within the world. And so, yeah, I mean, I feel like that was to me a really, really big moment. And also when Simeon comes to her at the end and he says, like, he's telling her, like, a sword's going to pierce your heart. And we all know where this is going, right? We all know what's going to happen in 35 years. We all know what Mary's going to go through. And um, it's just life is so life is beautiful, but life is so hard. It's so hard, right? And I think subjectivism has gotten us to a point where you can justify behaving in certain ways, and that little voice that you hear, you're right, we hear that all the time. And I wanted that to be part of Mary's psyche, where, hey, you don't have to do this. Why are you going to suffer? There's an easy way out of this. Like, it doesn't all have to be this way, but in order to do an amazing things and to honor him, it does have to be that way. It's never going to be easy. It's not going to be easy for my kids or your kids and all these things. It's not going to be easy to make a movie about the greatest woman, the Mother Mary who's ever lived, because people are going to always try to find a way to whisper and to make it something that it's not. But in the end, you're right. It's about love. It's all about love.
All about love. No, no, you're right. And to show that voice, right, to see it in the film, because it's something like, when Jesus was tempted, like we
Yeah.
think, because even myself, when I became really a true believer, I was always believed in Jesus, always followed the church, worked in the church. But when I really came to Christ, I thought, okay, it's easy now. And I'm preaching to other people that when you find Jesus, no, it's not. That's just the beginning. And then
Right.
that voice comes constantly. And if I'm not in the word almost every day, or at least reflecting, it's sort of these distractions come. And that voice comes constantly. The insecurity, the fear. It doesn't matter how many accolades you have. I mean, it doesn't matter what you've. I just the other day interviewed Dennis Quaid, and he's telling me that he's a huge star, and he's telling me
Yeah.
about the fear, not feeling worthy. And to hear that and to see that with Mary and to say that even she was tempted, even she had moments of despair, of fear, of anxiety, that's relatable. And the dialogue was dialogue that I can understand. That the person watching that, like you said earlier, when Joseph said, I want to, he said, I don't know exactly, but I want to take care of the child. I want to, like the words that he used were words that somebody today could reflect on and relate to. It wasn't something that I would read in the King James Bible that potentially he said. It was
Right.
relatable. And back to love, like that's what's missing, I think, in this world is love. And I always say the same thing, like if I'm going to proclaim the gospel and I'm going to talk about how much I love Jesus Christ and I talk about how much I love my neighbors, then I have to love everyone unconditionally. I can't say that I love Jesus, I'm a follower of Christ, but then, oh, I don't love that person because they don't look like me, they don't sound like me. We have to love everyone. And that's what this film showed me. And I think that's what people are going to walk away with after watching this, that we are called to love all of God's children.
Amen. Amen to that. I can only say amen to that. Exactly. Amen. That is so correct. So correct.
So how did you even get involved in the film? Like, how did this come about? Because it doesn't
Well,
seem like you do a lot of faith-based films, right?
no, I mean, it was really like I always sort of thought, like deep down, like, okay, it'd really be interesting to tell Mary's story and from her perspective, because she's always been part of the nativity story, part of this, but like, what is it really like to tell her story? So when a friend of mine who ran a big studio sent me this script. And I read it. He said, "Look, I was thinking about you because I know you've been thinking a little about this." And I read it. And I was like, "Wow, Tim's script is really good. There's just a few things in here that I would like to sort of see." And then I worked with Tim, and he wrote some great stuff. And then I thought, like, all right, and just kind of with blind faith, I just said, "We got to make this movie. We have to make it now." I just knew we had to make it now.
Hmm.
We never had that like feeling, but so I was like, "We just got to raise the money. We just have to make it now." So got all together, got on phones with people, and somehow put it together enough just to get it going and barely got it going. You know how it is,
Oh
right?
yeah.
And barely got it going and then sort of kind of kept it going, kept it alive. And it was just sort of like by just faith, just kind of going like, we're going to make this, we're going to do it. And then when we did it, we made it independently. And it was very nice when we started to show it to people, a lot of studios and places. And like for me, Netflix was the perfect home and the perfect partner because I know that like around, and they were very interested in the movie around Christmas. So I know if we got this movie done and we can finish it by December, you know, how many millions and millions and millions of people can see this movie and share this movie with their family at Christmas. I thought that would be important. So that's how I got involved. And just sort of once I got in, I just put my head down and we went. We just kind of like, not taking no for an answer and just kind of plowing forward.
So there moments at all, like, is even in the film, you talk about the hardest thing is trust, right? When she first enters the
Yeah.
temple. I mean, there must have been time. I mean, it must have took you years to make this film. So were there any moments where you started to doubt, or like we said earlier, the voice came? What did you lean on?
Yeah, well, when you're doing something, when you're doing anything, that voice comes, but when you're actually doing something that is actually, I don't want to say like for the good, but when you're doing the right thing, you're going to hear a lot more of those voices. And there's
Oh
going to be
yes.
there's going to be dark forces from the outside, and there could be dark forces from within, right? That kind of seep their way into the system of what's happening, right? So you have to sort of resist and fight those and understand like, but I think I've always taken the approach of making a film, it's like an athlete for me. Like once I'm in and my head's down, I've done all my training, I know what I'm doing, I know how to shoot a movie. Once I go, I just attack every scene and everything the best way I know I can. And then, like you said, there's always like this personal discovery that happens in the rehearsals, it happens in certain aspects of it. But yeah, it's just for me, it was really like a 16-month journey. I wasn't on this movie for years and years. I really just put my head down when I got involved and was like, if I'm going to get involved, we're making this movie. It's not like it's not going to be a development deal.
That's great. So what do you hope people walk away with? I mean, obviously we know it's love, but what do
Yeah,
you
no, I hope people walk away like, I think different people, different things. Like I always think like I'd love for a young girls or younger people to go like, wow, like Mary's my friend. She could be my friend. She's like you said, there's contemporary themes in everything she's dealing with, relationships with Joseph, her ostracized from the temple, being kicked out, not being wanted, not being loved, her family kind of get torn apart from her family. So there's so many sort of contemporary things that Mary goes through. I want people to look at her in a new, like in a new light, or in a different way, and say, wow, like I never thought about her plight prior to
Mm.
getting here, and how all this would be and what it took and what kind of young woman she was, and what kind of young woman she became. And just like us, she's human, she has apprehension, she has fears, but she made a choice, and that choice changed the world.
Wow. When I was in Italy, it was a couple weeks ago, we do pilgrimages and we had 50, 60 people. And I work with a lot of priests and so forth and so on. And they always talk about this devotion to Mary. I mean, if you look up, you probably know Alejandro Monteverdi, who's actually doing a similar film. And
Yeah.
I was with them recently and, they had issues, whatever, long story short. And his wife's telling me Mary is really what brought them back to the church.
Mhm.
And for some reason, everyone tells me Mary, Mary, Mary. And as I'm in Italy, I realized from just listening to people, that's what's missing from my life is this devotion to Mary. I've never met anyone in my life that said that they prayed to Mary, had a devotion to Mary, and they regretted it. Every
Right.
single person that had some sort of devotion connection to Mary has only said positive things. So, of course, I made that devotion when I was in Italy. I'm going to pray to
Right.
Mary. And then when I came home, I went back to my normal life and watching this film, I said, that's still what's missing in my life is really diving into Mary, focusing on Mary, praying to Mary. And this film has really brought that to light again. And the last thing that I wanted to reflect on too was I think it's one of the last sentences, right? It's love will cost you dearly. And then I thought about that and just to reflect on, are we willing to pay the cost for love? And it's something to think about. But DJ, man, really, I got three films today I'm working on reviewing
Uh,
back to back, right? I got the what is it, the Great American Pageant or the Best Pageant. I mean, I
yeah,
watch
yeah.
movies all day and review books. And this movie really, I'm telling you, it spoke to me. It really, and
Oh,
I
man.
think it's going to speak to a lot of people out there. You did a fantastic job. And I think maybe
Oh.
you'll start doing more faith-based films. I mean, on Netflix, that's for
Who
sure.
knows? We never know. You never know. It could be great. It's wonderful if you find the right story and we're in the space and it makes sense and you get to do it the right way, right? You have to do it the right way, and that has to be his way. You do it for him, right?
Oh, I love it. That's right. And as this comes out, what, December? When is it going to be on?
December 6th, all over the world on Netflix.
Amazing. Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed today's episode of Walk in Faith. Always remember you have the ability to inspire and evangelize your words and actions. God bless you. And watch this film, Mary. And I'd love to hear your thoughts and reflection points, like I said. And in the end, I really think we need to go back to love and really love people unconditionally, regardless of what they look like, the exterior, the interior. It's all about love. And that's what this film really has pointed out. So, DJ, thank you so much for this.
Well, thank you for having me. It was a great talk. Thank you.
My pleasure.